want to ask a question. Who do you think made this statement? I'm just going to read it straight from the laptop. It's a certain gentleman talking about the police during the Wapping dispute in the 1980s, in the mid-1980s. This is what this gentleman said. This leads to the question of the role that the police should play, if any, in civil society. Who are they protecting and from what? Now, you may think I'm talking about Jeremy Corbyn. You'd be totally wrong. You may think I'm talking about Red Ken Livingstone. Wrong again. What about George Galloway? Is that something he might have said? Possibly. But unfortunately, all those three answers would be the wrong answer. That quote comes directly from the lips of Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition. When he was writing for a publication called Socialist Alternatives, in fact, I think he was actually editing the publication called Socialist Alternatives. And this was in the period 1986-1987. Now, in 1987, what I was doing with my youth and vigour was defending the country and the British military in Northern Ireland. Not Sir Keir. He was working for Socialist Alternatives, which, I quote, was the publication of the British section of the pro-self-management ex-Trotskyist group, the International Revolutionary Marxist Tendency. Now, to me, that's about as scary as it gets when it comes to somebody being almost certainly the next Prime Minister. Now, I've never seen Keir Starmer repent or recant any of the positions he held. And I'm taking this from Libcom, which is a far left publication. It's as far as I know, it's a far left publication. It's certainly nothing I've heard of on the right. And they're obviously saying that Keir Starmer sold out by becoming leader of the Labour Party. If you look at the positions that Keir Starmer holds, I want to ask the question, as people start to think about voting for these people, has he changed any of his position? And how many other people in the Labour Party that are going to be in front bench will hold similar positions? Look at, I was going to call her Claire Rayner, Angela Rayner, in all sorts of trouble, in a world of pain at the minute. Look at the woman who is, I think, going to be, is she Home Secretary or the Chancellor? Wrote a book and then said very, very openly that she plagiarised it. So there's all sorts of absolute train wrecks about to come on the country because of the Labour Party. And this information about Keir Starmer isn't something new. I haven't just done a deep dive on the dark web to find this information. The same information's not as much information, but the same sort of garbage that he was involved in is all over his Wikipedia page, or his Wikipedia pages. So Keir Starmer, pillar of the community, leader of the Labour Party, I was going to say leader of the Conservative Party, but there's not much difference nowadays, is there? Leader of the Labour Party was a revolutionary socialist, according to the two sources that I've looked at, which is Wikipedia and the libcom.org website. And I'm sure if people really started doing some digging, they'd find all sorts of other juicy stuff as well. Now, that worries me intensely, because has this revolutionary socialist changed his spots? Is there any evidence that he is not still a revolutionary socialist? Well, look at him during the BLM protests, taking the knee, taking a side on something that he should have, as a responsible politician, been speaking against the division that movement brought upon the country and actually upon the whole of the Western world. Unlike many others, he was very, very cowardly when it came to speaking against BLM. But what does this mean for the country? If we have these revolutionary people what if Labour get this supermajority, 150 seats or whatever they're predicting, where does that leave the United Kingdom? And I think people on our side of the argument, patriotic people who love this country, need to think very, very seriously about how they vote in the next general election. Now, I've said this many times before. I despise the Conservative Party with a passion. I've never voted for them. I live in Northern Ireland. I vote for unionist parties. And again, I'll be voting for an independent unionist if he stands. He hasn't declared whether he's going to stand or not, but in my constituency, I'll be voting for an independent unionist this time round. But in England, Scotland, Wales, and in Northern Ireland to a certain extent, because we can, if it's going to be a very tight result, we can have an effect, but it looks like it's going to be a complete catastrophe. People need to mobilise, and they need to start thinking about voting. And this is what I suggest very quickly. If people are going to vote in the next general election, and I suggest everybody does vote, I think not voting is a catastrophic cop-out, and it's going to let our enemies take over the country. What I would suggest is this, that you go to your local Tory or Reform candidate. And actually, we've created a website for this, and I'll put it in the, we're still tweaking it, but I'll put it in the comments below. We call the website The Pledge. And on The Pledge, it's a statement of what we believe, and personally it's what I believe the vast majority of the British public believe about the state of the country and the direction it's going. You could take questions similar to what you got in the pledge to your local candidate and say, where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? And get a voter block together of patriotic people in every constituency and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to go to all the candidates and find out where they stand on these things, and then stick it on them and say, if you support these things, we'll support you. If you don't, we're going to vote for a candidate that does. And that is probably the best way of thwarting this. Also, tactically voting. The Reform Party are not going to stand down. There's going to be a bloodbath between the Reform Party. You've got to be careful about saying bloodbath when you think about what happened to Trump. But there's going to be a bloodbath between the Reform Party and the Conservative Party. And what people need to do, because the politicians haven't got the sense to do it, is sit down and work out who are the best candidates that believe in what they believe. And honestly, you won't find them in the Labour Party or the Lib Dems, that's for sure. You probably find it very hard to find them in the Conservatives or Reclaim. But if you go to them and you stick it on them with a document and say, what do you think about these things? At least you'll have an idea of what's going on. I think this next few years, if Labour get this mega majority, are going to be a complete nightmare for the country. For everybody in the country, not just patriotic people, for everybody. There is a red menace, and Keir Starmer is going to be leading that red menace. He's going to be leading this deep dive into socialism that we're going to experience, probably in a worse way that we've ever experienced it before in this country. So no matter what happens in the next few months, I would suggest make sure you're on the electoral roll, and then form small community groups in your local area as voter blocks, aligned around positions and policies rather than political parties. Then you go to the political party and say, we've got 1,000 votes, 5,000 votes in our group, we're a voter block, this is what we believe, what are you going to do about it? And see what happens. And it might bring back some very, very interesting results and very interesting responses from the candidates that will mean they have to show their true colours. So it's just a thought. I hope I made myself clear on that and what I'm saying. I'll put a link in the description below through to the Pledge website. Like I said, I'm going to tweak that a little bit. I'm working on it with a few different groups of people at the minute. The brains behind it always remains anonymous, but there are a few other people working on the site as well as me. So yeah, we've got to stand up, and we've got to make sure that we are very, very careful how we vote at the next election. And then, of course, there is the other opportunity of people standing as independents and see how independent candidates go. The smaller parties, unfortunately, probably including Reform, will not be able to make a difference. It's about finding the Conservative politicians that will actually stand up and say, yes, I believe in what you're saying in that document. It's not an outlandish document. It's very balanced. So yeah, that's a little bit of a shot across the bows. The election's coming soon. Keir Starmer is the leader of the Red Menace. And to me, we've got to stop Starmer. It's as simple as that. I don't like the Conservative Party. I don't like Reform, to be honest with you. But they're going to be a lot better bet for this election than these disastrous, calamitous communists that are trying to grab hold of the organs of power in the UK. And then after this election, when the dust settles and we see what's happened, whether Labour's got a massive majority or not, I strongly suggest that serious people get in a room and start talking about forming a political party, because that needs to happen as well. I'm going to do another video about some other things that have been bouncing around my head, and I've heard other people talking about them as well. So I think it's good to share the love and let people hear what we can do to make things right, as the little purple guy in that advert for, I think it was car insurance, said a few years ago. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah, we've got to stop Starmer, we've got to stop the Red Menace, and we need to think very carefully about how we do it. See you all soon.